I've had the privilege of working around phenomenal leaders throughout the year, working in the door-to-door industry from the ground up. And, you know, when I got recruited in, I did not want to fucking do it, but all my buddies were doing it. They were all making good money. All I wanted to do is snowboard all winter long, put 100, 120 on my tags, and just, that's it. So summer sales seemed like the best thing to go do, and I did it. And I'm gonna share this story first before we get into my resilient training, which I feel is a really good training as teams are starting to build up. Right now, we're in the build phase because we're about to get into the best months, which is the best earning months. This next 6 months will set you, right? I always tell people when I meet with teams at this time of the year, I said, look, now's the time, because you don't want to worry about your bills in November and December. You want to be chilling with your family, maybe treat them to a vacation. You want to buy the things you want for them. You don't want to stress about it. And have a little bit of a cushion to revamp up in January, but it all starts today and you have to be super disciplined. We're going to talk about why having a good team, right, around you so that you guys can all have success doing it. And building a team is everyone. It's not just the leadership. And leadership isn't a title. Leadership is influence. And you can be a leader by just being that person around as a rep, and you can be a leader. You can inspire people. I had a moment when I was in Wichita, Kansas knocking. I shared this yesterday with Lee, which was my curbside moment. It's like sub 32 degrees. It's freezing. My buddy has my car. I wasn't disciplined enough to have a car. So I'd say drop me off in my area. And I was sitting on a curb freezing. And I was like, dude, fuck this. I walked a mile in cold all the way to a strip mall that had a Barnes & Noble, grabbed a coffee, sat in a self-help section, and I just randomly grabbed a book. Destiny, Fate, whatever it is, I was there, and I read this book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. Completely changed my life. Because in that moment, I realized that there's people that have lived an entire life and have basically put all their wisdom into a book to share with you. And I said, wow, how many other books are like this? And if there's only one thing you take away from a book, that's all you need. And so that was a completely changed my life on like, whoa, there's something bigger than what I know. Because I was caught into the trap that I know everything. And what I have in here was good enough. The reality is I don't know what's out there, okay? So that was my journey to learning and trying to figure out how to become the best version of myself. And every day I ask myself, how do I get better and how do I get better? So I do this a lot with my leadership. So when I meet with my leadership groups on quarterly retreats, we'll spend a lot of time talking about this in our first quarter to talk about, hey, how are we going to build our team? What do you want your team to feel like? Who do you want showing up to the meetings, right? Who are the people that are going to be there when shit gets tough and get hard? What you guys should be really focusing on and what the Legacy platform gives you, right, is it gives you something to aim for. And they do this through their competition series, right? Every competition series is designed to gear you up so that you can push yourself to get just one extra deal out of each competition. If you just get one extra deal out of each competition, you do it through the 5 competitions they have, that's a lot of money, okay? Then you're just going out. You guys should be focusing on is how do we go beat, is it the Cup is the biggest competition they have here, correct? Masters. The Masters, right? The biggest competition that you guys have, you guys should be figuring out right now, how do we assemble the team to go win that? Because there's always that one team that's always winning it, but that's not the case. They got to fall at some time, right? Golden State Warriors, they're not good anymore, right? Because the next team has assembled on the vision of winning the championship. So you should be thinking as you guys start going on through your journey over the next month is saying, how do I go out and how do I prove that I can do this job at my best? Because it's really just you when you're out there, but in here it's us. How do we hold each other accountable? And how do we fill this room every single week with more people? You guys should be constantly talking about the opportunity to everybody that's out there, and it should just be part of what you do. Now, the reason why you don't share the opportunity is because you're not having success yet, and that's fine. But what I have found out is that when you bring somebody in with you, it creates this accountability that like, oh, I brought my friend in, I got to show him that, hey, I'm going to go do this. And so We should see this room double over the next 60 days, and then over the next 120 days, it should be tripled. And we can do this in this office, but first we need to identify is how are we going to build this office? What do we stand for? What's our culture? Lee and Misty have done a phenomenal job here with setting a great foundation for you guys to go have success. And so I thought a lot about this in building teams and building leadership and what is this? I'm a huge student of this, right? I took this online course with Harvard, and you can take them. They don't cost much money, maybe $1,500, $3,000, $5,000. There's a lot of courses on there that can really help you teach, that can really teach you the foundation of what leadership is and how do you build teams. You're gonna have to do this, right? If you don't have a family, your family will become your team, right? The way your children act is a direct representation of the culture of your family and the culture of how you're raising them. And so if you do have a family, and I'm raising 3 daughters, I'm constantly trying to teach them to understand their natural gifts that they have no idea, because I can see it, I'm their father, and saying, look, if I don't teach them how to hone this leadership skill that they have, right? They will use it in a very malicious way that can be very detrimental to their life. And so I do a thing with my kids every Monday where we sit down and I teach them something. And so currently right now where I'm teaching my kids what are called core values. Their school does a very good job at teaching them core values, and I love that. But I need to be teaching them that. And I need to. So we sit down, I teach them core values. What does a core value mean to them? The next week we talk about, okay, cool, we have a core value jar we have. And then so anytime that they do something around the house, I say, hey, look, I thought we agreed that we had core values in his home, and you agreed to this. So walk me through, and what am I missing here? And so I talk to my children this way because I need to. Because if I don't, they will go into the world and the world will teach them this stuff. And so I'm sharing this with you because this has been my journey, because when I first started, I didn't know anything. But I did learn through my career, having really bad leadership when I first got in. On my first summer I did was poor leadership. But I learned so much from it because I said, that's what poor leadership looks like, and I don't want to do that, because I was a rep. The second thing is that I had great leadership. I said, that's awesome. This is what it feels like to have great leadership. So you guys are all leaders. It's not a title. It's not, hey, you're a leader, so go be a leader. It's how you carry yourself, and how you do it. And you see this with children all the time. My oldest daughter, Madeline, just has it. Can't explain it. Everybody wants to be around her, the way she dresses. People want to dress like her. And I catch her using it to her advantage. And I say, you can't do that. It's very bad. But she's 10 years old, right? But the point that I'm trying to get to here is that for a group to grow, we all have to raise our standards, and we all have to figure out what is the core values of this group, and are we willing to hire and fire based on the core values that we establish as a team. And core values should be established. I've had offices, when I was managing offices, we would do this exercise where everybody had a core value and we would stick them on the wall. And then we'd always constantly talk about this. Are we living to this? And if not, why not? Because we could be doing anything, guys. In my curbside moment that I've had many times, I had another one in Texas when it didn't go under 115 degrees for almost 3.5 months. Like literally under the stoop, I was in a pass out, and I got dropped off at 10, didn't get picked up till 10 at night. And in these moments, you have to dig deep. This is why I love running. Because when you're hitting mile 27, mile 30, mile 35, you have to go into the abyss and you have to pull yourself out. That's where you find yourself. That's what this job is. It's the hardest thing in the world to do, but the only thing stopping you from doing it is this. And if this isn't here, that's a great place to be, because the only place to go is up. That's it. So I want to share a story about Earl Shackleton. Does anybody in here know who Earl Shackleton is? Go ahead.
They made a voyage to Antarctica and the ship got stuck.
Correct. And so what a lot of people don't know about Earl Shackleton, right, is that Earl Shackleton had two He had 2 journeys before he was successful on the 3rd one, okay? And this is what we're gonna talk about today. So this training that I put together, that's narrated by Nancy Cohen from Harvard Business School. There's about 4 videos in here where she talks about this, and I'm gonna have some questions in between that I want you guys to open up. I have a ball here, or I did. I'm gonna throw it to you so that you guys can talk, and I want you guys to really engage into this and to really start thinking about this, okay? Because I believe, in my opinion, that you guys have the right core to be doing 100 deals a month easily. As soon as you guys get this momentum going and going, then everybody wants to be a part of this. This room will be fully packed, but you guys have to believe that we're going to get there. That's the first thing you have to believe, is we're going to get there. Once you believe you're gonna get there, you're gonna get out, you're gonna put the work in, not for 1 day, not for a week, not for 2 weeks. You're gonna stay committed until you guys win the championship. You guys should be constantly talking about, how do we win this championship? How many people do we need? Who needs to step up? Who needs to be the person in this room that's gonna say, it's me? It's gonna be a rep. It's gonna be a rep in here that's gonna step up, that's gonna level up. So in this training, I'm really excited to go through this with you, because it's an incredible story, what Earl Shackleton shares with you. Okay, so we're forming a new team. Okay? You're forming a new team to undertake a high-stakes adventure. Our high-stakes adventure is, how do we go win this competition? How do we go beat San Diego? You guys should be thinking about that every single day. Okay? What would you prioritize when hiring? Here are the things here. Technical skills, creativity, grit, prior experience, attitude, or independence. So the graph that I want to show you here was based on a prior training that I did. I wasn't able to send this to you guys previously. But on the poll that I took prior with some leadership, this is kind of the overall what everybody picked. And a lot of people usually falls into what is called the technical skills and prior experience, right? You're about to go on a journey to Antarctica, where nobody has conquered this place ever. This is like unventured land. So I thought logically would be grit for me and prior experience. I would need somebody that has prior experience to go do this. This right here is the ad that he posted to find his team. Safe return doubtful. When I hop into recruiting meetings, I typically never talk about the money. The money's always gonna be good, right? I think the money's gonna be good in anything you do if you're gonna be committed to it 100%. There's a lot of jobs you can make great money in. Solar, we're very fortunate, right? So when I recruit, I typically don't talk about the money. I say, this job's hard. Most people fail. More than likely, you're gonna fail, right? And so when you start talking about your friends and family and people that you're wanting to recruit into the business, we naturally always want to talk about the money, right? What you need to say is, this is hard. It's 115 degrees for most of the months. People are rude, right? Your soul's gonna be tested, right? Especially your feelings will be hurt. And you should start thinking about how you talk to people about the opportunity, because he was able to build a crew with people that read this. But do you think that if you had an ad like this and people said, I want to join, do you think they're on for the right purpose? So when building a team, you can't build it off of fluff and hype and all these other things which people love. The Legacy platform is one of the best platforms in the industry to recruit to, hands down, okay? The tech, the tools, everything that you need to go do it, the competition series. But at the end of the day, you still have to get out of your car, you still have to go out and knock on a door, and you still have to be out there for at least 4 hours minimum a day to have success. at minimum. So I'm going to share this video real quick on her talking about the beginning of this expedition here. It's about 3 minutes.
Shackleton was a leader who was made, not born, and he was made in very large part by 2 previous expeditions that he had made to Antarctica under 2 different sets of circumstances. The first was at the early turn of the century, the 19th into the 20th century. He, under the command of Robert Falcon Scott, a well-known British naval commander, he and several other men traveled to the Antarctic continent in an attempt to be the first team of men to discover the South Pole. That voyage taught Shackleton a lot about what weak leadership looked like. Scott was weak. He was indecisive. He was insecure. He wanted his men to like him more than he wanted to achieve his mission, which included, very importantly, the safety of his men. So Shackleton learned a lot about what great leadership was not, reminding all of us that we can learn from other individuals as we make ourselves into good leaders, partly by negative example. The second voyage that very much affected the making of Ernest Shackleton was a voyage that he himself captained. It was an amazing journey, and Shackleton and his small team got close to the pole, the closest that any group had ever gotten, 97 miles north, when Shackleton realized that his men were too weak to complete the trip to the South Pole and get back safely. And so he turned away, a wrenching decision. And as he said later to his wife, better a live donkey than a dead lion. So there he learned the critical importance of looking out for the safety of his men and of looking ahead from what would it cost him and his men, even though they'd get to the South Pole, if they never got back. Shackleton's most famous expedition, and the one we're going to concentrate on now, is the Endurance expedition, which began in August 1914 when the team left London for the Antarctic continent. On their way to the Antarctic continent, Shackleton and his men sailed into the island for their last outpost. It's called South Georgia, deep in the south of the Atlantic. The whalers and sailors there warned him the icebergs are unusually far north this year, and that if he and his men sail south, they may face danger and hazard as a result of a sea literally ridden with ice floes. Shackleton makes the decision almost immediately to sail on despite the risk. By January 1915, they can see the Antarctic coast. It's about 80 miles away. And then, ice forms around the ship. Big bergs form around the ship and lock together like a vice. And the Endurance and its 28 inhabitants is absolutely stuck. And suddenly, everything is very different. And the mission, walk across the Antarctic continent, is now up for grabs. And last but not least, it's summer, the days are long, and the men who are supposed to be setting up base camp and getting ready for this astounding expedition are confronted with endless time and all that might mean.
So Shackleton has a decision when he's at the outpost to basically say, hey, look, the advice he's getting from all the other shippers in the area, the captains saying, hey, look, icebergs are much more north this year, probably shouldn't do it, but he makes the decision as a leader to move forward. He's the leader. And he has 28 people with him, and he decides to go forward. And then now, they're stuck with ice around them, and essentially this is where they're going to be. And the question that I ask, right, is do you question Shackleton's decision to continue on from South Georgia Island? If you are a leader in that situation, do you move forward? So you guys say no, okay? Why?
Fear of their lives.
So your fear of their lives. Okay, so fear has come into your decision making. Okay? So there's a lot of emotion in this, right? Because you have essentially taken away what your moral compass is, what you know is right, your judgment as a leader, and now you are essentially saying, hey, I need to kind of think for my people and figure out what's the best for my people. Now, keep in mind, he had 2 expeditions before this, and the one prior, right, he was 80 miles out and didn't make it. So he's on his 3rd try here. He has experience. And for whatever reason, he decides to move forward. This is what leaders do. Leaders are very concise. They analyze the data really quick. They make a decision. And after you make a decision, there is no more emotion after that. Okay? It's a very Zen idea. There's something that I do when I day trade, and I've been studying a lot about this because emotion's really high in it, is that all the emotion should be before you make the decision. Once you make the decision, the emotion's gone and you push forward. Because the emotion, if you're anchored onto it, you will never move forward. So when you decided to take this job knowing it's 100% commission, you eat what you kill, your bank account is your scoreboard for your efforts that you put out every day, the emotion should have all been up until the moment you made the decision to take the job. Once you take the job, that's out. And from that point forward, you say, what actions do I do on a daily basis to have success based on all that emotion and all that analysis I did before I took the job? I would make decisions, and then I would spend the entire time after on the doors, right? Specifically on the doors, thinking of, did I make the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? Is there a better job for me to be doing? I can make money better ways. All that is doing, right, is taking you away from the action that you need to be taking at that moment based on the decision you've already made. So if you have emotion after the decision, that means that you didn't make a decision. That's life. Life is making a decision and saying, I'm going forward with it. Now I need to put a plan together and move forward. And what we're going to learn next with Shackleton is, what do you do when things go wrong? How do you step up and how do you lead yourself? Because that's what needs to happen. So we're going to talk about this. And this is how teams work, because I've actually done this training before with several teams, and the next week, half the team was gone. And the reason why is because you're going to learn right now what Shackleton did and what great leadership does. Okay? So regardless of the factors that influence his decision to proceed, Shackleton must contend with his present situation. Okay? We are all currently in a present situation. It could be finances, it could be relationships, it could be many things. But you are now in your current situation, and thinking about the past and what you could have done and all of that is a trap, because it doesn't live. It doesn't exist. It's in a place that we don't know. Doesn't exist. But what does exist is right now, in this moment, in this current moment that we're living. So imagine yourself, you're in Shackleton's shoes. You're in command of a ship that has been immobilized within a sea of ice. It's about the size of this group. I want you guys to write down, if you guys can open up your phone really quick, and I want you guys to write this down. Write down your answers to these 2 questions that I'm going to ask you. What is your top priority as a leader of this expedition? This is our expedition in this room. We're stuck in the middle of the ocean that's freezing. You are in charge. What do you do if you're the leader? And second, first off, what's your top priority? And second, what do you do first? So just write it down. If you can do it in your head, that's great. I'm going to throw the ball around, and I want to hear what some of you guys have to say on this. So just let me know when you guys are ready, and I can throw the ball to you, and you guys can chat.
Honestly, my top priority would probably be the safety of my men.
Okay, so safety of the men. So now that you know the safety of your men is your first thing you're going to do, what is the first thing you actually want to do now?
Honestly, I'd ask everyone's opinion on what to do as well.
Okay.
Because realistically, if I'm about to go into that situation where I'm stranded, I don't want people behind me, following me, that aren't dedicated to also get to this goal.
Okay, so that's it. So what you want to do then is you want to get your team together and say, hey, what do we do next? Okay? Who wants to share next? Okay, so she's going to walk through essentially what happened and how what he felt was the most important thing. So what's so interesting about leadership, right, is that from my experience is that I've always wanted to lean into the most logical things. Like when I first went through this, what I wrote down was how much food do we have? How long could we last for? Like how do we, like just survival mode is essentially what I chose. That's what I would think. But you have to remember, right, that when you are a leader, leadership isn't how do we survive. Leadership is getting people to believe in themselves and how do we get everybody bought into and keep this big thing that we're trying to go accomplish here, the main mission. And so Shackleton, she's going to share how Shackleton went through and handled this here.
It's interesting to note that he focused a huge amount of his attention as the leader on affecting the engagement, the outlook, and the cohesion of his team. He immediately set about putting together a whole host of activities and, in some cases, precedents for his men to follow in now these very changed circumstances in which it looked like the mission of the expedition was now called into question, or maybe even over. First, he ordered that every man come together for an hour after dinner in the stateroom to socialize. Talk, play games, compare notes, engage in theatricals. They were going to come together and they were going to enjoy each other's company, and they were not going to be off alone in their bunks thinking about how miserable their situation was. One day he decided to have a waltzing contest on the ice, and he was the lead-off dancer. And there was a wonderful afternoon of rating the waltzing skills of his men. He had dog races across the ice. He was constantly thinking about how to keep his men engaged, focused on the positive, and working together. Some of this was an attempt, right, that wouldn't have been lost on his men to keep the hours, now long days, because we're in the middle of the southern hemisphere summer, keep the days filled, keep the men from having too much time on their hands. But most of it was about something even more important. It was about what Shackleton referred to during the expedition as creating mental medicine, cohesion, things he could do or order his men to do that would make them feel like they were doing productive, enjoyable, upward-looking things with their time and their abilities. And he used that image over and over and over as a critical resource in leading and managing the 27 men that were his team. The real point is that mental medicine, managing the energy and outlook and engagement, and particularly the cohesion of your team, is at least as valuable and perhaps more valuable than any other resource that a leader has. In Shackleton's case, it was more valuable than the food supply. It was more important to his team's survival and success than the temperatures on the ice and then the oncoming specter of the Antarctic winter. How do we know that? How can we know that about our own leadership today? We know that because when we stop to consider what happens if the leader does not pay careful, consistent attention to the energy of his men, of his women, of his team, it is inevitable that a downward spiral sets in. Ennui, which could easily have become the weather front over these men in these circumstances, can become boredom. Boredom can become disbelief and despair. Despair And dissension can easily then, in high-stakes situations, become death.
Very interesting, right? He said that he wanted to avoid them sitting in a bunk and thinking. This is what we do. Instead of getting into the car, driving out to area, knocking that door, we sit and we think. And so what he felt, which he's called mental medicine, and I talk about this all the time. This is actually why I'm here at Legacy, is because Legacy has built an entire platform on what is called rep engagement. Now it's up to us to choose to get into the rep engagement. So as you start to build teams and as you start to get together, you should say, how are we engaging with each other? How do we put together groups so that we are not constantly thinking about the hard thing that we have to go do? Because there's hard things that they're doing on a daily basis. It's cold, it's freezing, right? You have food, you have the daily task. And so what Shackleton said is, hey, I need to keep my people busy. I need them to keep busy on day-to-day tasks. More importantly is that we need to celebrate and we need to have playtime. We need to have fun. We need to do the things that human beings are designed to be. Because the moment that is stripped away from you, you get lost in your head, which ultimately, like she said, leads to death. You see this in every day with people that are around us that constantly get caught in their mind over and over and over again on a story to something that happened to them in the past that doesn't exist anymore. Your body changes every cell in its body almost, I think, every 7 years. You have been very different versions of who you are. You could take a picture of yourself when you were 5 years old, and you say, yeah, that's me. It's not the same body. You could take a picture of you when you're 16, you say, that's me. Not the same body. Everything in your body has completely changed. So it is very important as human beings and for us, right, is that as you start to build teams and as you start to get together are we a unit? Do we just show up to the meeting, run through some numbers, we get excited in the very beginning, and then we just break off and we're just our own thing? I always say you can always tell the health of an office through their group chat. Always. The best teams' group chats are so lit, they're firing, and there's wins, and I almost got this, there's encouragement, right? It's always healthy for a team to have at least once a week, there's one event, even if one person shows up, that you get together and this is a camaraderie. We're creating cohesion. Guys, we're building something really big here because if we all buy into this and we all do it together, we could triple this office size and we could change a lot of lives. A lot of lives. And so the question you always want to ask yourself, right, as leaders, you don't have to have a title to be a leader. You don't. Leadership is influence. That's all it is. And so I would challenge you to start thinking of, hey, these are things that I want to do and put it together. Hey, guys, I have a barbecue at my house, got a pool. Anybody that could come hang out. These are things that you guys should be doing on a day-to-day business because you guys all need each other to get to that next level. If you guys all run independently, solo, some show up to the meetings, some don't show up to the meetings, it doesn't work because it's fragmented. And so it's really important. One thing I learned from this, right, and you're going to continue to keep learning how we continue to manage this situation, right, and push forward. But I want you guys to constantly be thinking about this is, what is this team? What do you stand for? How do we get engaged, right? And more importantly, do we have the right people on the team? And if we don't, should we find the right people that are on the team?
I feel like a lot of times we're looking for cookie cutters, right? Like we want people to come in, be rock stars, be this and that. But, just from right? Like my observance of people, discussions with people, people are creating. You know what I mean? Like Joey, his first year in solar made $750 his first 6 months. You think he had the foundations and all of that, you know, year one? No, absolutely not. But last year, he made $400,000, right? 4.5 years later. So, question, what is the balance between, you know, finding the right people and saying you're the right person, right? Because if people are here, people know why we're here. We know this is commission. We know what this looks like, you know, so what's the balance between like, yeah, this isn't going to work, and hey, you know what, I'm investing in you, and you know, you keep showing up and I'm here for the long run.
Well, it's exactly what you just said there, right? The scoreboard is interesting because when you look at basketball teams and you look at football teams, not everybody's scoring the points. Sometimes you have a really good bench because you need a good bench to practice. That's going to push you forward, right? You need a good practice squad in an NFL that you can practice against. The thing about this is that development happens at all different lengths. When I first started selling alarms, it took me forever. It was like almost 6 weeks before I got my first deal. But I believed that I would get my first deal. I showed up. I was reading the books. I was showing up. Hey, I had questions and all that. And I will invest in anybody that's doing that. And just saying, hey, if you're willing to stick and push through this and get through the learning curve and you're going all in, I'm all in on you. Because I just want commitment. But if it's the opposite of that, where you're not getting any deals and you're winging it, late to the meetings, and you're not doing the tasks, you're not watching the videos, and it's like, hey, look, you're not in on this. So actions will always tell me, right, where somebody's at and what they're willing to go do. Anybody can say anything. The actions will tell you exactly what somebody's willing to go do. That's all this world is about. Are you taking action? Some people said, hey, I want to go become the best version of myself. Well, what does that best version of yourself look like? Have you thought about it? What does that person do 10 years from now? What do they look like? Right? What do they dress like? What do their friends look like? The self-image is a very interesting concept that if you guys ever get into it, it's a really good book on it called Psychocybernetics. And Psychocybernetics talks about this idea and this concept is that we don't have a clear vision of who we are. Right? I spent a majority of my life in this, it's a very Zen thing to say, where I am not the person that I think I am the person that I think people think I am. Meaning, I walked around always constantly thinking, what does this person think who I am? And then so you create this self-image around what you think people are thinking of you. It changes the way you dress, changes the vehicles you drive, it changes your behaviors, and you have no control. And you really think about it is that, do you think about that person that you ran into a month ago at a convenience store? No. So when you knock on someone's door, do you think they think of you a month later? No, because everybody's thinking about themselves. That is the thing that you have to break through because those are the limiting beliefs, those are the limiting things that never allow you to progress to that next level because it's holding you back. Because what if the person on Facebook that I used to go to high school with and I post something, they think something of me? It's like, okay. I used to think this way. And when you break away from this idea and this concept that I can do and be whatever I want, awesome. Okay, who is that? How do I become that person? What does that person do? And what would I need to start doing today to become that person? Because it just takes time. It's just a mind shift. And trust me, when you become that person, you feel so good about yourself. Because nobody holds you back. People say things like, awesome, great opinion. Obviously, you're projecting on me. Great. That's on you, not me. Because I know who I am, I'm confident, I'm secure in everything that I do. So for each force, consider what you can do to manage it now. Just consider that. So we talked about processes, action, leadership. What were some other things that were said? communication,
Education.
education. See, a lot of times when I was coming up, I was part of really shitty teams and really good teams, right? But what I realized was that if you're always waiting for Lee to constantly be posting on the group chat or your DM to be constantly posting in the chat to keep you going, everyone should be participating in that. You all should be on it. You all should be trying to lift each other up. This is a community. If Anthony Robbins put you onto a group chat with all of his most elite people, you just wouldn't sit on there and just watch. They would kick you off. You need to add value to the conversation. This is what I'm always constantly talking about, is that when I look at teams, is that a lot of teams are waiting for their leader to take action and to do these things. And the reality of it is that you are all leaders in this office. Every single one of you are leaders. You all need to take action on it. Hey, I watched this awesome TikTok. I watched this awesome reel. I watched this awesome YouTube video. You guys should all watch it. And don't be the person that somebody posts something and you don't watch it. Watch it. That was an incredible video. That was a horrible video, bro. Don't ever send those again. Just joking. Because we want to encourage and we want to lift people up. It's really hard for some people to jump out of their comfort zone and to share something and to do something, right? And they get crickets. This is what team members do. When my kid does something, I don't just sit back and be like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I encourage them. That was incredible, awesome work. Because I want to continue to encourage that behavior. They're not good at it at first. I know that. But over time with encouragement and uplifting, and this is what teams do. This is what teams do, is they encourage each other to keep pushing forward towards a common goal. And we lift the people up that are not doing good. Hey, man, what's going on, man? Let's go knock together. I always tell my management when I work with them, I said, dude, don't do a one-on-one in an office. Go knock with somebody for 3 hours, and you'll know exactly what's going on in their life. Financially, relationships, mentally, all these different things. Because this is a camaraderie, this is a team that we're building. And the glue can't just be half the team. The glue needs to be everyone on the team. Because if you have great culture, culture always pushes out the bad people. It just happens naturally. So you guys got to create a culture in this office to where it pushes people out naturally, not by selective push out like it's Lord of the Flies. People come and say, whoa, this is different. This is not me. They just walk. They leave. And that's what you want. But you guys got to get together and figure out what are we doing, how we're going to do this, what's our culture, what do we stand for, and we're willing to hire and fire off of this, okay? So Shackleton, this is the next part that we talked in. This is specifically to people that are hiring. So whether it's lead, DMs, is that you need to ask yourself, how can you influence it through your hiring process? Talking about your culture, what we do, our expectations. Expectations are really, really key. I wish I would have learned this at a very young age, which is just raise your standards. Raise your standards in your friends. Raise your standards in the way that you eat. Raise the standards on how you hold yourself accountable. Raise your standards in the girls that you date. Raise your standards. Just raise them a little bit higher. And you'd be quite impressed when you continually to keep doing this, how good your life becomes over time. So raise the standard of this office. Hey guys, we just do 3 bills a day, that's it. That's the standard. And you'd be surprised how that becomes the standard and how well everybody does. But you guys all got to be bought into it, and you guys got to be talking about it. What will you guys do differently now as we've been going through this exercise and you're starting to understand this? Is what will you do differently in your role in this office? I wanted to be a manager for so long. I got into door-to-door in 2009. I was really decent rep, wasn't a great recruiter. Actually, I wasn't a good recruiter at all. How you grow in this business is you got to be a recruiter. That's it. If you can't recruit people in, then how can you be a manager in this business? And so when I got in, I was a solar rep. I was crushing it, like crushing. 15, 20 installs a month, all door to door, all self-gens, just crushing it. They would do, at Vivint at that time, they would do open interviews because they were expanding like crazy, and I kept getting turned down. And I was like, why? Why? Because they knew I wasn't ready to be a manager. I was a top rep, working, I was training people, running correlations. They're like, you're just not ready yet. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I wasn't ready. Because I didn't have all three components that was needed for me to become self-sufficient to actually grow. I would have failed, I would have fizzled out, and then I would have just been one of those guys that says, I want to get better red line and I'm going to go become a manager because they're going to give me a title there. It's like, no, you're not a manager. Management's a lot of responsibility. Management is doing what we're doing right here in this room. It's just creating teams. I didn't know how to recruit somebody. So I asked all the best recruiters, how do you recruit? How do I constantly get people in? How do I train people in the middle of the funnel? How do I get people actually out of the middle of the funnel and get them into self-gen reps? How do I develop them? How do I make them better people? How do I get them glue into our program? How do I scale? I didn't know those things. I could have been a DM, but I would have just managed 3 or 4 guys. I wanted to manage hundreds of guys. So progression takes time. And you need to understand that. Hone in your craft. Become the best salesperson you can become. And then once you become the best salesperson is, can you train somebody to do what you do? And if you can't train them to do what you do and have success, you shouldn't be a manager. Because that's your only job, is to duplicate. Is to recruit, train, duplicate, and retain. That's management. And if you can't do those things, you're not ready to become a manager. You're not ready to become a leader yet. Because all you're going to do is you're going to bring people in and they're going to have the crappiest experience and they're just going to bounce. Because you're worried about just making commissions and selling and trying to make money on them, and they feel it. People want to know that they're working with somebody and they're working together and that we're going to go build something together as a group. We're in this together. Now, I see this all the time. A lot of reps feel like, I just feel like you guys are just here for the override. The override is just a way to pay for the sweat equity that you put into developing people. So if you're aspiring to be a manager, you need to master those things. Can I recruit good talent consistently? 10 to 15 to 20 people a month? Because that's what you're going to need to do to have a good office. Can I train them within 3 to 4 days so that they can actually make money starting week 1, going into week 2? Because you have to start making money by week 2 or they don't survive. Can I duplicate? And then can I retain them? Which is what we're all talking about here. Okay? So she's going to talk about here, which is really cool, about now as they end the tail end of their expedition. And this is a key part because maybe your office is in this part. Maybe we have people in here that are fully bought in, but maybe we don't have people that are fully bought into the team. And if somebody's not fully bought into a team, it's fine. But Earl Shackleton's going to teach us right now, how do you get those individuals bought in? Okay, and this is a really key part of his expedition. Oh.
Let's picture Ernest Shackleton. The ship is stuck in the ice. Outwardly, we can see that he's confident, sanguine, interested in each man, intensely engaged in the work of managing his team's energy. Inwardly, he is increasingly concerned for the ship's survival amid the ice floes. Because what's happening beginning in our summer, the winter now, in the southern hemisphere, say June 1915, is that ice, those big icebergs in which the ship is stuck, are slowly beginning to crush the ship. The men are still living on the ship, but they can hear the timbers starting to be strained. By August 1915, the ship is visibly foundering because the ice has it so tightly locked that it's now at about a 50-degree angle with the flat surface of the ice. Shackleton is making plans to have the men abandon ship. At the same time, winter is arriving. The days are getting darker, temperatures are plummeting, and the ship keeps getting buffeted by that ice. Shackleton tells a couple of confidants in midwinter that what the ice gets, the ice keeps. Meaning, if the ship is damaged further, they will have to abandon it, and it will eventually be claimed by the sea and by the ice. He's worried, and he paces the ice, trying to think about not the original mission, how we're going to walk across the continent, but how. If we lose the ship, and it looks increasingly likely that they will, how will my men survive, and how will I lead them to survival? And most important in that context, how will I help them believe they can survive? His men don't see that during the course of the day. He's confident, he's doing the daily things, he's managing and leading all the time, but he's nervous. The men abandon the ship in September 1915. They put up tents, they take the lifeboats, they grab all the resources, food, stores that they can from the now cracking, very damaged ship. And the ship is left, mast broken, there, as the men begin to make a kind of crude camp. They live there for 2 months, and in November 1915, one day, Shackleton says, "She's going, boys!" And the men watch as in 9 hours, the Endurance slides through the ice, and the ice closes over. There is literally no line on the horizon for anyone, including Ernest Shackleton, to see. That night, in his diary, he writes, "The Endurance sank today. I cannot write about it."
Okay, they're screwed. He could tell he can't even write about it. The did shook, because now it's real. And this is gonna happen to you guys. This is going to happen right when the heat kicks in. It's super hot, there's fun activities happening. You wanna go boating, you wanna do a bunch of fun stuff. But this is gonna be the time that we need to get focused, okay? And so what's gonna happen here, right, is that he wrote this here, is he said, Shackleton and the crew are on the ice, flow with little more than 3 lifeboats, the dogs, and essentials equipment from the ship. Shackleton insisted, however, on saving a crew member's banjo, seeing it is a valuable tool for making mental medicine, as if not more important now before the ship went down. So when everything is at its worst, he still understood that the energy of the team, the mental medicine of the team, and the engagement of the team is now even a higher priority than it's ever been. Do you feel that when it comes to very critical decision makings like this, that when you get too many people involved, everyone's choosing something different? And then it makes it difficult then to try to, as a leader, to rein in and make that decision. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel that sometimes when shit is hitting the fan and somebody comes in and says, hey, this is what we're gonna do, and this is why, that it's sometimes easier just to get behind that? When Tom Brady was down against the Falcons in the Super Bowl, he walked in. Do you guys all know this story? When he walked in, he looked at his team and he says, we're going to win this game. And then he moved on back to go do his routine. And everyone knew that they were going to win the game. There was no strategy. There was nothing. He just said, we are going to win this game. That's what leadership is. Leadership is being able to make concise decisions for your people, knowing your people, because you're so engaged with them that you know that this is going to be the best for everyone. And if you have true leadership and influence, they will follow. If you know the story, which you should because it doesn't tell the whole story, you should read the book. There's movies on this. It's an incredible story. I'll share what happens. But let's go ahead and watch this last one, and we're done after this video here.
In the wake of the Endurance, sliding through the ice and disappearing from view, Shackleton has a critical realization that he holds to for a great length of time. And that is that his mission and the mission of his team has fundamentally changed. And what that means is that he must change his leadership. He must grow into the leader capable of dealing now with this much worse crisis. He writes in his diary that a man must shape himself to a new mark the minute the old one goes around.
Yep.
Think about what he's saying. He's saying, the finish line has changed. The goalposts are different. I've got to raise my game and develop the kind of leadership that is required to meet these new increasing challenges. Shackleton also understands, very much in relation to this, what all leaders need to come to know, which is that in order to do that, he has to keep meeting with himself about how he's going to do this. Because one thing is very, very obvious to him, and that is, I may not know as the leader exactly how we're going to steer toward the new mission. Shackleton wants his men to survive, but he doesn't know step by step exactly how he's going to do that. And the turbulence and volatility of his circumstances make that almost impossible. So what does that mean for his meetings with himself, for his making of himself into a new, even stronger, more resilient, more capable leader? It means that he has to be committed to the idea, to the notion that his leadership and management will involve constant adaptation, suppleness, improvisation, flexibility. He will maintain his abiding, deep commitment to the mission. I will get them all home alive. But how he does that, moment by moment, day by day, in the short run, in the longer run, will have a lot of flexibility and adaptability. The second thing that he understands, critical to accomplishing his mission, I will bring them all home alive, is he has to convince the crew that individually and collectively, they can do that. And that they, under his guidance, under his orders, under his leadership, are going to do that. He has to maintain the credibility of the mission with his men. At the same time, he's juggling, like all leaders, a number of balls in the air at all times. He has to continue to manage the energy of the men. And that means something very interesting, as it does for all teams in the context of turbulence. That means he also has to manage the people that are potentially disruptors, potentially great doubters, potentially capable of spreading doubt and dissension and negativity. And Shackleton takes up this challenge with great commitment and great execution. And what he does is, at its simplest, most fundamental level, is back to the old adage, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. So Shackleton does something right away after the ship goes down. He brings all the men he thinks, 4 of them, that are doubting Thomases, disruptors, dissenters, into his tent, so they will share his tent with them. He takes very special care to keep them on board. He keeps a close eye on them, because what he does not want, what he cannot have, and all leaders understand this with a big mission, he cannot have those doubters, those disruptors, spreading the negativity and doubt and dissension that they themselves feel. So, managing group and individual energy has an additional piece to it. You have to make sure that the enemies of the change, of the mission, of the great achievement are managed so that they do not in any way take the mission off course.
Have we all experienced this before? You get that one person that starts complaining maybe about an install that happened, or this isn't working, and so forth. And it spreads, right? Like a cancer. What leadership does is they identify them and they bring them in, like Shackleton did. And this is a constant thing that is happening over and over and over again. Because, as we said earlier, we asked earlier, which was the energy of the team, it's a little split. So how do we get people that feel the energy is below a 5, right? Is that we need to bring them in close with leadership that fully understand this. What the overall mission is, get them bought into the mission so that we can have everybody on the same page of, hey, this is what we're trying to go do. See, when this is dialed in, the money always follows. It just always follows. But if you have the approach of, gotta go make money, I'm just here to make a paycheck, and that becomes the culture, it never works. That's why I wanted to do the training. I do this training a lot with teams, and I get first introduced to them because I'm like, hey, we need to figure out what this team is. How do we build the team? How do we hold each other accountable to this? How do we find these people that are dissenting, becoming negative? How do we bring them closer to strong leadership that can bring them back in, get them really involved? How do we do all this? And these are conversations you guys should be having with your leadership. Leadership should be having this meeting once a week, figuring out, hey, who are these people that are kind of being negative? I'm going to go grab them. They're going to be with me for the week. They're going to get in my car with me. We're going to go knock for the week. I'm going to help them get deals. I'm going to show them how to get through their pipeline. You're just going to work with them so that they become believers again, like, hey, I did make the right choice. Okay? So once again, before we end here, is 3 practices were essential to Shackleton's success as a leader. So if you guys don't have a mission, you don't have a target, you don't know where you guys are going from, figure out what that is. I've been talking about the main competition here at Legacy because it's a great place to go aim for. It's like a target, it's already built. You need a lot of people. You need everybody performing at their best to get there. You have time to get into it. Look, the Lakers play like crap until April comes for whatever reason, and somehow they just find a way to get into the playoffs, and then they go deep. And you need to find a way to say, hey, we don't have it yet, but we're going to get there. By the time it's to get to the playoffs, to get to this competition, we're going to be firing by that time. Okay? So find a mission. Get everybody bought in. Figure out what the core values are as a team. And then more importantly is that you can hold somebody accountable if you are not a leader. Like, hey, bro, I love you to death, dude. You show up late all the time. You're not putting any numbers on the board. And I need you to step up out of love. That's it. I need you because if you step up, I step up. We need to all raise the bar here. We all need to raise our standards in our office. Look at your calendar for the next week and decide where you can practice leadership like Shackleton. You don't need to face life and death circumstances. No matter where you sit now, you can be sure there is a mountain you need to climb. What are 2 or 3 things you must do differently? Just sit on that. Think about it. Meditate on it. What are 2 to 3 things you just need to change in your life? And take action on those things starting tomorrow. Okay?
This is a fascinating story of leadership in crisis, and there are at least 4 leadership lessons we can take away. First, Ernest Shackleton was simply brilliant at toggling seamlessly between day-to-day management and leading the mission. What do we mean by that? We mean that he could easily, at 1 minute, be dealing with daily tasks, kill seals to feed the men, adjust the duty roster. At the same time, he can easily quickly move to what do we need to do today, tomorrow, next week to get the men home safely. So he moved easily between daily management and the larger mission and what was needed to accomplish it. Second, Shackleton was exemplary in assuming full responsibility for both the situation that he and his men found themselves in and for continually trying with every adaptable tool he could find to improve that situation. So he owned that, his men knew he owned that, and that was partly why they trusted him and believed in him as he tried to instill their sense of will to do what they knew they must. Third, Shackleton had the discipline, and this is very important today for leaders, to continuously, relentlessly face forward. He made mistakes like all of us, but Shackleton never got stuck in endlessly replaying the tape of past errors. Instead, he would learn quickly from what hadn't worked and then force himself and his men to look to the future. So that relentless forward-facing posture was really important as a leadership lesson. And fourth, and maybe just the most important, is that he was absolutely visionary in the humanity, in which he exercised his leadership. He knew the power of orders and line and chains of command, but he really mostly led and managed through the spirit of caring for each of his individual men. He understood that literally the feeding and watering of them and the emotional support and respect for each of those men and his men as a group was absolutely at the core of everything he did as a leader. And so his men knew that he had that he was caring of them, that they mattered to him, and that was also critical in their being able to find the will to basically make the impossible possible here. This story, which is so very, very interesting, so compelling in our time, is really just one facet of a very rich history that contains all kinds of great ideas for here and now, and each of us trying to lead ourselves and our teams and our people in an ever-changing world.
People said about him after he achieved it. So Shackleton decided, just so you guys know, to leave half the men and to take his strongest men with minimum rations and to basically go and try to find a way to get to the next port, which took them 6 months almost. I think it was 6 or almost a full year, and almost died, finally made it, and because of the weather, they had to wait even longer, and they went all the way back, and every single person on that expedition survived. Everyone. Because he got them to believe in the mission, and they trusted him that he was the right guy to save them and to get them there. Belief is everything, and you guys have to believe that you guys have the right people in this room to go do extraordinary things. You have great leadership. Lee's probably one of the best leaders I've been around. He talks about you guys all the time. He cares about you guys. He's done a lot of things here in this office so that you guys can go have success. And he believes in you. And you guys should believe in yourselves and what you guys are about to go do. You guys should be doing 75 deals this month, next month breaking 100, and in the summer doing 125 to 150 a month. You guys can all go do it in this office, and I believe in you guys. And you guys should believe in yourselves. So this is what they said about him. They said, for scientific discovery, give me Scott. For the speed of efficiency of travel, give me Amundsen. But when disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton. Shackleton knew that management was important, but he never let it crowd out leadership. Management is important, but it never, ever is more important than leadership. There's a balance between leadership and management. There's not one or the other. So take another look at your calendar for the next few weeks and consider, how are you planning to spend your time? How much will you be managing? How much will you be leading? And what should I do differently? Remember, the first person you manage is yourself. The first person you lead is yourself. So if you want to be a leader and you want to manage people, you must master those things on your own. When I knocked full time, just as a door knocker, every day at 11 o'clock I was on the doors, didn't get home to 10 o'clock every single day, 6 days a week. Just was my job. Every single day. It's just my job. It's what I did. I wanted to make doctor money. Well, they work 80 hours a week. I will work 80 hours a week. My job wasn't to knock on doors. That's not what I got paid to do. My job was to talk to qualified homeowners. So when the reality of it, when I was out knocking all those hours, I was only really working for 2 hours because I was only having 2 hours of conversations with people. So think about that. Your job is to talk to homeowners. That's your job. So thank you for allowing me to do this training for you guys today. Yeah, just thanks. That was really great, I thought.